Hey, the Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible by Samaritas, which is the state's largest private foster care and adoption agency. But they do a heck of a lot more than that. They've been serving homeless families, persons with disabilities, abused and trafficked women. They're also one of the largest resettlement agencies in the state. They provide market rate and affordable housing for seniors and HUD housing for families. And they also have skilled nursing, memory care, and rehab communities in Grand Rapids, Cadillac, and Saginaw. Samaritas, thanks for their support. Great organization doing great stuff all around the state.
Hey, greetings, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to the week that was on Deadline Detroit. I'm Craig Fahle. Very glad to have you with us as we break down the news of the week. And every week I say this, but it's just one thing after another, constant flow of new information that is coming across us every single day. And as usual, my two guests from Deadline Detroit are here. Nancy Derringer is with us. Hello, Nancy.
Hey, how you doing?
Alan Langle is here, of course, the editor at Deadline,
Hello.
a co-founder there. Alan,
Hello.
Nice to see you. Very excited to
Thanks
have
for
Portia
having me.
Roberson from Focus Hope back again, second time in 3 weeks. We appreciate it. You obviously made an impression last time, so thank you for being here today. And Desiree Cooper is with us today. Des, good to see you, joining us from Virginia, actually, but welcome home. It's good to have you here, even if it is virtually, but I'm glad to have you here. Thanks.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks.
Well, it's been a long time since you and I talked, so I was really excited when you said yes to this. I wasn't sure, so I'm pretty happy about that. But I'll tell you what, today is Juneteenth, and I have to have a special shout out to President Trump, because he told me yesterday that I would have never heard about Juneteenth if it wasn't for him. In a tweet yesterday when he said, well, hey, I did something good. Nobody knew about Juneteenth until I came along. No, that's actually not true. Juneteenth has been around for quite a while, as a matter of fact. Now, has it grown in importance, obviously, in recent years? And I have to say, one of the things I'm really excited about, despite all, in light of all the celebrations taking place around the country, including here in the city of Detroit today, there's a real movement to make this an actual national holiday, which, yes, it's symbolic, but it's also important, it seems to me. And Des, I'm going to let you start on this one. You're in Virginia. You were surprised to find out today that Virginia has already taken this step.
Took my trash to the curb, and a neighbor flagged me down from a very safe distance and told me there would be no pickup today because it was Juneteenth, which, it just sort of blew my mind. I am in Old Virginia, the seat of the Confederacy. And for us to have sort of made that move so quickly, it blows my mind. I do hope that we keep it as a day of commemoration. I've never celebrated Juneteenth. I've heard about it, and I was talking to my son the other day, and I said, I always thought it wasn't a specific day. It was sort of like, that's why what is Juneteenth? Like, what is that day? And I always thought it was sort of this imaginary day that we all can sort of imagine that moment when someone who is enslaved hears that they are suddenly free. Now, imagine that you're hearing it 2 years late.
Right, yeah, well.
That people died enslaved when they were really free. And so it's a horrific moment. It's a horrific moment. And that's what I've always thought of it being. And I congratulate the movement of the time for making it sort of, it's about damn time holiday. That's very appropriate, but it's not a jubilation, and it's not a picnic, and it's not just a cozy day off. So I hope that we kind of keep all that in mind.
Well, I think we've lost perspective of a lot of things.
Holidays.
A lot of holidays. Memorial Day, people think of like, oh, the malls are open, there's sales. Labor Day, all these days that, how Columbus got a holiday. We can certainly get rid of that one. But yeah, I think we lose perspective on the seriousness. Memorial Day is in honor of those who died at war, and we, think of barbecue.
Hey, happy Memorial Day.
Yeah.
Why happy Memorial Day? I don't
That's our president, right? Yeah.
But it is something though that I think is important. And I've known about Juneteenth for a long time, and I first learned about it probably when I was really in my early 20s. And I had a couple of people that I worked with who are like, "Hey, we're going to Atlanta for Juneteenth." I'm like, "Tell me about Juneteenth." And it was just this huge gathering event that they were going to. A lot of HBCUs were represented there, and it was something that college kids were doing at the time, really trying to get this off the ground in a bigger way. And you see the momentum that it's gained, though. And the number of people that I see saying there, you know what, this is the right thing to do. There needs to be some recognition for this incredibly important day in American history. And Portia, I want to get your take on whether or not, how important would it be if this were made a national holiday? Because the corporate sector seems to be leading the way on this again. A lot of people getting the day off already.
So I'm all in favor of becoming a national federal holiday. I agree with Des, like, let's keep the focus on what it's about though, and not just sort of the malls are open, you get a day off from work. Nobody really understands what Juneteenth means. The other thing is that, I don't want this as the platitude of a response to like seeing George Floyd be killed. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want this, like, I don't need another festival to like sort of, here's a festival, we're going to celebrate it, and that's it, right? So I just did a post on Facebook that I basically said, everybody seems to be celebrating Juneteenth today. So as my Juneteenth gift, I'd like, myself and some of my Black friends to get a seat on the corporate board so we can help you guys make decisions about where you're spending corporate PAC money. Because if you're trying to basically redeem yourself, how about not supporting politicians and legislators whose, votes are always with, keeping chokeholds and voter suppression and all of that. So honestly, like, it's great that people, I think, are kind of a little bit more aware of what Juneteenth is, but, and I think this is helping that. But I really want to focus on what real structural change looks like, and not sort of this is the response to what has happened in the last few weeks. And so, hey, we're going to give you a holiday, or we're going to have a festival to celebrate it, and then be quiet and go away, please.
Well, and I think that's the concern, is that, they do this and then it's sort of like MLK Day, right? When some states decide, well, we're not going to follow that. I remember Arizona famously refusing to name it a national holiday, or to observe it, I should say. And that could be seen by a lot of people as, well, we've done enough. We are seeing some movements towards police reform that are taking place on the federal level. The Senate and the House are far apart on what they want to see. And so I'm not sure that ever the twain will meet on that. There may not be any real action before this election. And I mean, is anybody hopeful here that we might actually see some real reforms that actually tackle the issue of police violence?
I think if we have some changes in Washington, I think we're going to have to see a change in the Senate, in the balance. And I think the time is right. It's just not the circumstances that we have right now with the Senate majority still Republican, I think is an issue there. But I think with the change in election, potentially change of president, change in the Senate, it could be the right time.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Portia on this one. I think it's easy to make a gesture. It's hard to make change. And what we need is the gestures are coming fast and furious. Now we need to see the actual change. And the change comes from, as she mentioned, putting people of color on corporate boards, drawing the attention of the people who run the world, which is to say, corporate leaders and some politicians, to the things that really need to be changed, so that's.
I do think that there are a number of police departments, if I am to believe the talking heads on TV these days, that are run by African Americans, and that I think are feeling, sort of cut in two around this conflict. And I think that the public momentum toward reform may embolden or enable them to do some things that were not really possible before with the rank and file. In other words, it might bubble from the bottom up, from local forces that actually make some changes and start talking to the community and just start doing things a little bit differently. I mean, I'm sure I have a bit of rose-colored glasses on, but I do see that this is a different time, and that the forces themselves are very much in conflict. Especially people of color on forces, and so they may be feeling like they can embrace change without it feeling like they're eroding their authority as law enforcement officers. And so we'll see what happens on that.
Well, I'll tell you what, something to watch today. Right before I joined this chat here today, I was looking at some video that they were showing from Louisville, in which they're boarding up the courthouse right now in Louisville. It looks like they might be getting ready to make a charging decision. They sent everybody home from the courthouse and they're boarding up the courthouse, which tells me that this may not be going the way that a lot of people want to see when it comes to the death of Breonna Taylor on that no-knock warrant. Portia, you're shaking your head right now.
Well, that's just it, right? Like, I don't really, like, I mean, I'm glad some of these statues are coming down, but really, like, that's not going to be enough for me, right? Like, I want people to go to prison for running in some woman's house, a EMT's house, and killing her, right, on a no-knock warrant. Well, she didn't even have a chance to say who she was. Like, I got a call the other day about, I went to Cass, and so Lewis Cass, like, should we change the name? And I'm like, fine, change it. I don't really care, because the thing for me is, like, how about this? How about kids in Detroit get a public school education from K through 8, that they actually can test in the Cass and actually get into Cass, and then the kids that are at Cass, or whatever the heck they want to call it, have 4 years of an education that competes with the education that kids are getting at Country Day, and can then go on to U of M, where I went, where we have about 12 Black students there right now, but like, can really actually get into those universities. Like, that's all I care about. Like, I don't really care what the name of the school is. So I'm not wed to what the school is. I want to see structural change that makes a difference in the lives of the kids and people who are living right now. And that's not about whether or not the name is Lewis Cass or is something else. So
it does seem, though, that changing the name of like military bases is like the bare minimum of what we should do when it comes to this kind of stuff. I mean, it's symbolic, it's important, and it shows that as a nation, hey, maybe it's time we actually take a look at our legacy here and the people that we hold up as quote unquote heroes in this country. Just because you picked up a rifle and fought in a war, if you were on the wrong side, you were on the wrong side, period.
Right.
I think I agree with all, we certainly need to see substance, but the idea that we've overlooked for so long that we're celebrating these Confederate soldiers, and I wrote on Facebook the other day, I said, well, what's their legacy had they won? Would we have had 20 or 30 more years of slavery had they won? And I think it's a correction that's long overdue. Is like, why are we celebrating these guys who were fighting for something so horrific? But it's in addition to what, I mean, we shouldn't overlook the substance of what, and this is an amazing opportunity right now, because I mean, the country has missed so many opportunities in the past, and somehow this was the thing that really galvanized and really created this amazing opportunity. I mean, I look at the gun violence, and I always thought, like, with the elementary school, when the guy went in to the elementary school, I thought, well, this is finally going to hit a nerve of children dying, and it didn't. And then you got the guy in Las Vegas who just did this massacre, and I thought, well, maybe this. And so it's hard to say what does it, but this is an amazing moment that, I mean, we should certainly seize in the opportunity and get as much as we can done at this time.
And see, I'm such a pessimist because, one, I agree with you. I thought Sandy Hook, I was like, this is it. And when Sandy Hook didn't change it, I was like, oh, it's never gonna change. Like, they killed all white children, like, and nothing happened. So I'm like, oh, well, this is it. Like, we don't care about any kind of gun control. Like, I just thought, like, there's no way you can go into Sandy Hook in Connecticut and kill, little white children, and somebody doesn't say, like, we got to do gun reform, right? And so I agree that I think the change is necessary. I think one of the differences is probably that we, in my house, didn't ever celebrate Columbus Day. So we weren't ever celebrating people who got a day. So for me, it's like, yeah, we should change it. We should be celebrating them. Oh, wait, we never celebrated at the Roberson household anyway. So, okay. But I do think there's an opportunity for change. And I said this a couple of weeks ago when I joined you guys, that, like, I do think that these protests, and certainly the things that are happening now, I feel like there's the element, the really courage for real change now. I just when all these people are kind of piling on, like, oh, Juneteenth, we're going to do this for Juneteenth, and we're going to do that for Juneteenth, I'm sort of like, oh, let's slow down, because we've seen this before. We've been here before. We get like one holiday, and then it's like, okay, like I said, everybody kind of go back to normal, and we don't really change any major things. I mean, you know, so that's my only fear with like changing names of things and, you know, all of that, is that can end up being the thing we do, the thing that America does, and then they go right back to normal.
Well, before we move on, I do want to say this. As somebody who's done a lot of environmental reporting over the course of my career, I am in no way in favor of mountaintop removal, with the exception of Stone Mountain, Georgia. It's time to erase that thing from the face of the side of that mountain in Georgia. I'm sorry. That thing is atrocious. It's an abomination.
Is that the one that has the diorama of the Confederate generals? It's like,
yeah, it's carved into the rock. Same guy that did Mount Rushmore apparently did this, and they have these laser light shows that go on there that show these Confederate generals riding off into the ether. You know, yeah, it's pretty.
So I do want to. I might have to stand behind Trump this one time. It's like even a broke clock is right twice a day, right? And when he said nobody ever heard of Juneteenth before him, what he meant was white people.
Yeah,
and
true.
I think there's some truth to that. And I do think that what is happening now is that there are a lot of mostly white people who are looking around like, whoa, Aunt Jemima, whoa, Uncle Ben, whoa, Aztec, you know, like having no idea how much we swim in racism every single day. And so I do think that it is not just symbolic. University of Florida, I did not know that they're doing cheers to alligator bait until I was on Facebook this morning. I'm like, what? And so you probably have freshmen there cheering at a game about alligator bait, thinking it's the gators, and not realizing they're talking about little black babies being set out for alligators to come and eat them, and that's funny. So we're starting to connect who we are today to who we were back then, and that connection is clear, has never been severed, and yet somehow we are blind to it. And someone like Trump wakes up and said, nobody ever heard of these things until I came along. And he is right about that. That's what this moment is about. And so it is not just symbolic, but it can be really overwhelming. I mean, it almost feels trivial. Like, are we going to change Aunt Jemima? Like, are we, you know, is our syrup going to be different? Is our football team not going to have this name anymore? Are our clothes not going to be called this anymore? Are we going to ever have a day, you know, I call it White Atrocity Day. Can you actually schedule anything on any day where a white atrocity has not happened? No. Okay. Whenever you schedule your event, there will be a white atrocity that we can associate with that event somewhere.
Well,
so we're learning that now. And I think it's overwhelming, and it can feel a little trivial, and yeah, we're going to fight over name changes, but what we're really doing is waking up to how much we've accepted as normal in our society, and how horrific it has been for us as people of color to grow up swimming in this water. We're drinking poison every day.
You know, it's for me, it's a great reminder to everybody right now, when you look at some of the debates over things like Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben's and some of these changes that are taking place, it's just a great lesson reminder. Don't read the comment section, people, because you will be exposed to just how deeply entrenched some of this stuff really is. And
or do read it, so you cannot be in denial anymore about this is how people think.
It's a good way to, some people, obviously, and people who,
a lot of people.
A lot of people, but it is really disturbing when you plumb the depths of this and just see, you know, just how entrenched some of these attitudes are, as if somehow your pancakes will taste different if that mix has a different name on it. I'm sorry, did you look
first
at that
they came for the Land O'Lakes girl, then they came for Jemima. What's going to be left for us?
I know. And so what's next? You know, it's so dumb to read some of this and anyway. But all right, so let's go on, because it was actually kind of an important week for equality issues. The Supreme Court definitely made itself heard this week. In fact, the shotgun blast to the face for conservatives, as President Trump called it in a tweet yesterday, about basically making sure that people can't fired for their sexual identity, and also for the continuation of the DACA program. John Roberts basically telling President Trump that this was capricious. There was no justification for you doing this, and you didn't even try to spell out a legal justification for it. You just wanted to do it. The Supreme Court, is this them basically reasserting their authority, or do you think this is just business as usual there? They just read the law the way it was supposed to be.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Alan.
I was going to say, the one thing I think the Supreme Court, I think John Roberts is, I think one of those Supreme Court justices who's sort of like moving in the right direction in the way of trying to create a proper balance on the court. I think Alito, who I believe wrote the minority opinion on the 6-3 opinion, it was outrageous. The way his thing was, he said, what we're doing here is doing legislation and saying, but the reality is there's a law there. There's a law about discrimination, and for the fact that some words were left out of that law, the Supreme Court can interpret the intention of that law, and the intention of the law was not to discriminate. And
are you talking about DACA or LGBT?
LGBT,
right. Okay.
The 6-3 decision, and Alito was saying that basically the Supreme Court was legislating, when in fact they were interpreting, which is allowed, in law, and it was a good interpretation of the law that had left out a few words there. And so,
but Alito also was trying to suggest, he likes to be the strict interpretationist, right? He was trying to argue that the word sex should be used the same way that it was used in the original writing of of the law, and saying that we should take sex as to what they meant back then. To which I argue, if that's the case, then how come we can't revisit the Second Amendment? Arms are not the same as they were back in 1789. Right. They're completely different. These things change. And so if I'm looking for consistency on the court from somebody like Alito, okay, if you're going to be a strict interpretation,
no, like Alito, like that's the first mistake you made. Like,
well, yeah, of course, but
let that go.
But I think. Go ahead, Nancy.
I think, and I did not read the decisions themselves. I read the analysis of the decisions by people who I think know what they're talking about. John Roberts has gone through his life in a bubble of privilege. Okay, he was born rich, he stayed rich, he was groomed for Harvard, he was groomed for Harvard Law, he blazed through there. He was basically, the day that his first pair of diapers was changed, somebody said, you're going to be a Chief Justice someday. And through all of this, he developed this kind of reverence for the law, right, and the court and all this. And he said in the past that he doesn't want the court to become politicized. But at the same time, we have the three conservative justices were all appointed essentially to be political actors in the court. I mean, Clarence Thomas didn't have any kind of great, distinguished legal career. I don't know about Alito. Gorsuch, he's right out of the Federalist Society playbook. But the DACA decision in particular is very tenuous, because I think what Roberts said in there was essentially, you guys screwed it up by being incompetent. So finally, we can be thankful for the idiots that Donald Trump has been putting in control of some of these very powerful offices. And I think he said, if you had basically dotted your I's and crossed your T's, I would have been down with this.
Or if they could have at least provided a good legal argument, which
right. They basically just said, they were just like, let's boot this to the Supremes and count on our majority to carry us through. And it didn't it didn't work this time, but only because, John Roberts is a fussy completist when it comes to this stuff. So if Trump gets another term, DACA is done.
Right. I mean, it's like that decision was a roadmap on how to fix the legislation so that it would surpass.
Exactly. Yeah,
But
exactly.
the Trump administration has said they do not have enough time before the election to do this. President Trump saying this morning that he wants to move forward with an attempt, but there likely won't be enough time to get it done. So maybe, depending on what happens in November, this becomes a moot point. Let's hope so, because where are these kids going to go? This is what I've never understood. Where are you going to send them?
Is there such a base layer of cruelty to this whole argument that I just find so repellent? I mean, you're brought here as a 3-year-old, you grow up in Texas or Louisiana or California or Michigan or wherever, and suddenly you're supposed to be repatriated to your homeland.
Right.
I mean, come on.
Right. You're going back to Pakistan. You're going back
repulsive.
to Baghdad.
And the fact that so many of these dreamers are educated and, and contributing members of society, it's vile. I mean, it's just another sign of how the Trump administration.
Well, and if you look at the numbers,
cruel and evil
in cages. So I mean, this is par for the course. They put children in cages,
Right.
So
Sure.
this is this is what they do.
Yeah.
What they
and
do.
if you look at the numbers, though, and there's some new reporting that's out in the last couple of days, taking a look at the economic contributions of the Dreamers and DACA recipients in this country, and how once they had a legal path forward, how they took steps to get educated, go to college, get better jobs, all the stuff that they could do when they were able to come out from the woodwork and actually be who they are. And
you could make that argument for that. I wore my shirt. You can't see it. It says we built this joint for free. I don't need to justify why they should be here. The reality of it is, even if they hadn't done any of that, even if they had grown up and committed a crime and gone to jail, the reality of it is, again, they've been brought here when they were children. They've never lived anywhere else. Now you're going to send them to someplace, they have no family, they don't know where they're going, and you're just going to send them back. So the reality of it is that, I think there's no question that, people of all races, colors, creeds, whatever, have contributed to American, society and economics and all of that. But, that should not be, it's like I saw on Facebook the other day, even if somebody is guilty of a crime, they shouldn't be shot dead by the police. We got to stop trying to make sure that we make only the good people that have done the right thing, the people who are safe from craziness that lives in the White House. We got to make sure that everybody's safe from that craziness, even if you have not necessarily done the right thing your whole life.
Right.
Well, again, we've got a lot to cover here, and I want to make sure we get to as much of it as we can. The bombshell of the week in Washington, too, besides the Supreme Court, besides everything else, John Bolton, the Trump administration desperately trying to stop the publication of his book, although every single reporter in Washington already has it. So there is no stopping.
It's on the trucks, man. It's going out to the few remaining, Dead Tree bookstores in the country.
I was going to jump here and say he was going to be my schmuck of the week.
Well, you know what? There's a lot of ammunition for him being the schmuck of the week, Alan. So we'll
I thought it was hysterical that the headline of one of the stories is Bolton says Trump not fit to be president. And I'm like, wow, that's a 4-year-old headline.
Right.
Is that suddenly wow, Bolton has declared him, finally, we get it.
Well, at the same time, though, some of the things he did point out in the book, and one of my favorite passages is when he's calling out the Democrats in the impeachment process saying, yeah, guys didn't go big enough on this thing. There was so much other crap that you could have looked at that could have probably swayed some people, but you made it too narrow. The guy's asking China for help in winning the election, saying, buy soybeans so I can win the Midwestern states. I mean, this is this exact sort of stuff that the Democrats were trying to get him on, but they didn't go deep enough. Maybe it was a time issue. I'm not sure. But it certainly seems as if Bolton makes a point there that there's a whole lot more stuff that could be investigated and looked into. And for that, obviously he's being called a liar and a traitor by the Trump people and everything else. But John Bolton, for as much as I can't stand him as being in charge of foreign policy in any way, shape, or form in this country, I don't think he's lying about what he witnessed in the White House.
I agree with that.
Yeah, but it's just too little too late. I mean, who cares? We already know everything that he's saying. I haven't read the book. I don't know the allegations, but I believe them all. I mean, there's just no low bar that can be low enough to describe Donald Trump, and everything that's coming out just only reinforces all that. But we really needed Bolton at a time where he was, I don't know, he was duck and cover. He was trying to protect his investment in his book. I don't know what the hell he was doing, but he could have testified. He could have given the information when, when the impeachment hearings were going on, and he didn't. And that's the missed opportunity. I agree. He's the schmuck of the hour. He's the schmuck of the term, because he could have stopped this for us. He would have been pivotal at that moment. And now, he's just kind of piling on. I mean, once the generals have spoken.
Well, when he got fired, and Nancy and Alan, you were both on with me for the week that was, and I said, there's no way that this stuff's going to come out before he has an opportunity to make some money off of it.
Right.
And so, I mean, that's pretty obvious. He didn't want to ruin his advance by testifying
But
in
wouldn't
Congress.
he be a bigger hero now? I mean, I just think people would have been dying to get that book, because he would have been a hero of the moment. And,
right.
And
well, but it's like, yeah, you'd think, but at the same time, there is some cold truth to his contention that no matter what he said, they were never going to let him, the Senate was never going to convict. I mean, that was,
right.
I agree. He would
Susan Collins would wring her hands a little, and Lisa Murkowski would be concerned.
It's weighing on me heavily.
It's weighing on me so heavily.
There might have been a couple more votes in the Senate. There's no way the Senate would have gotten rid of him. I mean, we've seen this guy can do anything, and just that thing that he said about shooting someone on Fifth Avenue, that just rings and rings and rings throughout his presidency, how right he was. And we thought like, no, you could get in trouble for shooting somebody. But I think we think like he'd probably be able to justify it if people would support him.
I don't know. I'm looking at the numbers. I'm looking at the polling data that I've seen over the last few weeks. It looks like that thought process is eroding a bit. A lot of people are starting to really question.
I don't trust those numbers.
Well, you sound like Debbie Dingle. Debbie Dingle said the same thing this week.
I know, and I got to roll with Debbie this time. Like, I don't trust that. That's what got us in trouble the last time. Like, oh no, it's a lock. It's gonna happen. It's Hillary. Hillary started falling back on her campaigning.
Yeah, but I think this time people aren't going to make the mistake of not showing up.
Convince me that Donald Trump is going to lose to Joe Biden until Donald Trump actually freaking loses to Joe Biden, and then I'll be convinced. So.
Then we start on the next task, which is to sow the ground with salt so that his awful children cannot step in and try to take his place.
Right.
Speaking of children.
Yeah.
This is a nice little segue here. Can we all agree that Matt Gaetz out of Florida is just a weird freaking dude? Matt Gaetz yesterday got in an argument with a congressman about his children of color. Nestor, we find out, apparently the son of an ex-girlfriend that he has taken into his home and raised. But just regardless of whether he was making a valid point or not, I mean, this was just a weird story in an otherwise very strange week.
That's now a Twitter thing.
I understand.
Have you seen it with people saying this is my adopted son Nestor, and they have like their cat and their dogs?
But it was just such a weird thing that
I can't tell what is the son supposed to be black? I don't know.
He's Cuban.
He's Cuban.
He's Cuban. So, but it was a really weird thing for him to try to make a point on.
First of all, how old was Nestor when Matt Gaetz became his father?
Well, he never adopted him.
I know that. But he was
in his house.
I think he came he was like 12 or 13 or something like that.
Okay, so he claims that he raised him?
Yes.
13 to 18 does not count. That's
sort of
partially raising.
Bruce Wayne, Dick Grayson kind of vibe here. Like, this is my young ward, Nestor. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it is just kind of strange, a weird relationship. But I just wanted to mention that because it was such a strange thing to pop up in the middle of the week to distract us from all the other idiocy that's going on out there right now. All right. Well, we've been going for about 35 minutes, so we probably should get to Schmuck of the Week if we want to make sure that we do this right. So Alan, you were going to put up Mr. Bolton.
Yeah, I think John Bolton. I mean, it's like, he could have helped out earlier on. I mean, the thumbs up I'll say is that he just adds to the list of Republicans, conservative Republicans, who have stepped forward to say, yes, this guy is crazy. Yes, this guy is unfit. So I give him credit for that. But the fact is that he kept his mouth shut so that he can make money off his book. I think there'd be some justice if somehow they figured out a way to take the money away from the profits of the book or made him donate it to something, worthwhile, but that probably won't happen.
All right. Who wants to go next with their Schmuck of the Week nominee? Why don't we
I
go?
will.
Oh, go ahead, Desiree.
Okay.
I was going to also do Bolton. So since that's been taken, I'm going to do the entire state of Florida.
Well, we didn't even get to COVID, but yeah, Florida not faring well as we've seen.
Not
But
very well.
Florida could probably win just about most weeks,
Yeah.
just in general.
Florida
All right, Nancy,
man, Florida
Nancy,
woman.
what do you got there?
This is, I don't know how much this is going to show up, but this
Oh,
is a
Melania.
video released from Melania Trump's social media team. I don't know if this is Stephanie Grisham's work or somebody else. This is her Juneteenth, what do I want to call it? Juneteenth commemoration for all of the peoples that have ever had the slaveries. And it is, she's like sitting on the other side of this room. She's framed in the window. You can see this on her Twitter account with these Trumpian, things behind her, the gold, everything. And she's in this black dress with her long model legs crossed. And she's like, and I want to read now a picture book for the children. And it's
very let them eat hoe cakes.
Yeah. it is the most tone deaf, but it's always like that with these people. They have what?
You couldn't even get the black people that work at the White House to be.
Yeah. But I mean, it's the most, they are so strange. Why do they think this is good? It's like, it's oh my God. So anyway,
Melania cribs from a lot of people. We know that. And this is with that window picture, it almost reminds me of the painting of John F. Kennedy that's in the White House, where he's standing in front of the window. Are they trying to recapture that this time?
Who knows? I have no idea. They are a deeply strange family. But that's,
and of course we may learn more about the family from Trump's sister, who's got a book.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be a good one.
All right, Portia, who do you have?
So I think my schmuck of the week is a group of people like Des. It's the people who tomorrow night will have to weigh between deciding that COVID was a hoax and or signing the pledge that if they should die or get sick, they cannot blame the people in charge of the rally who brought them there. So it's a collective of schmucks who have now decided that it is maybe not a hoax, but in fact, they might die from it, but they're okay with letting Trump kill them because
freedom. That's why.
They interviewed some woman.
It's just a bad cold.
Because I really support him and I really want to see him, so I'm willing to risk it all.
Okay.
They interviewed a woman out there who said, "I don't care. I'm going to risk this. I want to see the president."
That's what I saw.
I was like, yeah.
All right.
And then she went to shake the reporter's hand, and he's like.
Well, my Schmuck of the Week nominee is something, this gets back to something Desiree was saying earlier, that you can't pick a date that doesn't involve something bad, right? And Ford Motor Company is my Schmuck of the Week. They're launching the new Bronco on July 9th. That just happens to be O.J. Simpson's birthday. That's a good one.
All right, can I just ask you, though, how many people know that?
Well, everybody knows it now.
Well, but I mean, I guess my feeling is how many people carry that date in their heads? Oh, it's OJ's birthday. So
yeah, well, it just
seems
like
there's
OJ
2
days. There's 2 days you could avoid: his birthday and the day that he was in the chase, which was June 19th or something like that. And everybody remembers where they were when that happened.
Juneteenth.
Hey!
Wait, was it Juneteenth? It was June something. I'm gonna find out. Hold on a second. I just lost it, but it may have been. It was definitely sometime in June. And
I
here
remember.
we are. Am I back? Did I lose you guys?
I was
No,
the
there
only
it is.
person in the world who didn't see it.
You were?
Bronco chase.
How did you not see that?
I was out of town. It's a long story.
Well,
June
hopefully,
17th.
yeah, that was just hours worth of gripping television there that took place. But that's my Schmuck of the Week. But I think John Bolton probably is the winner this week. We don't get to declare a winner every week because there's usually such stiff competition. And like I said, we can never name Donald Trump because it is named after him. The Donald J. Trump. The J stands for Genius. Schmuck of the Week award.
Sophie's been retired.
All right. Well, I think we should wrap it up, everybody. I do appreciate your time. Desiree, thank you very much. And thank you for joining us again. It's been a long time, and we'll have you back. I hope you be willing to do it again. Thank you very much. Portia Roberson, we always appreciate it. Keep up the good work over at Focus Hope. We do appreciate that very much. Nancy, thank you. Alan Legel, appreciate it very much.
Thanks
Michael
so much.
Lucido for
Thank
engineering
you.
the broadcast. And of course, thanks to
Michael.
Samaritas, our sponsors. And thanks to all of you who watch this and check it out. We've been getting bigger and bigger numbers every week, which I appreciate. And don't forget, if you missed part of this, it will be available as a podcast a little bit later this afternoon. Anywhere you find podcasts, just look up the Craig Fahle Show. You can find it there. And of course, the video will be online at deadlinedetroit.com tomorrow. And so you can find it there. And if you like it, hey, share it, rate it, all that good stuff. It all helps and brings traffic to our wonderful website, deadlinedetroit.com. You can get all kinds of great stuff there all week long. So thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Happy Juneteenth. Well, happy Juneteenth isn't the right word, but hey, remember Juneteenth and remember why it's important. And let's see if we can't actually make this a holiday that means something. So thanks, everybody.
Father's Day to you fathers out there.
Oh,
Father's
thank you.
Day. Happy Father's Day.
It is Father's Day this weekend. I keep forgetting that, but what are you going to do? All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thanks a lot, and stay home safely.
My name's ML Elric. I'm an investigative reporter and a connoisseur of fine yogurts. I know a little bit about Detroit. I know a little bit about deadlines, and I'm asking you to become a member of DeadlineDetroit.com. Like me, I'm not asking you to do anything I wouldn't do. I'm making a monthly donation. My wife is making a monthly donation. I know that seems redundant, but they need the money, and the money goes to a good place. Getting the story out, getting the truth out. Because if we don't support local journalism, there's some people a couple blocks away from here who are going to get away with a whole bunch of stuff that's going to cost you a whole lot more than just a few bucks out of your pocket every month. Go to DeadlineDetroit.com, become a member. You'll see it's really easy at the top of the website. Give early, give often, give generously. Just give a damn. That's the best way I know how.
Hey, the Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible by Samaritas, which is the state's largest private foster care and adoption agency. But they do a heck of a lot more than that. They've been serving homeless families, persons with disabilities, abused and trafficked women. They're also one of the largest resettlement agencies in the state. They provide market rate and affordable housing for seniors and HUD housing for families. And they also have skilled nursing, memory care, and rehab communities in Grand Rapids, Cadillac, and Saginaw. Samaritas, thanks for their support. Great organization doing great stuff all around the state.